And you say you're not romantic? I have never been a romantic all my life. I have been the quiet and intimidating guy. The always observant individual at the back of a room. Normally brooding and not that approachable. I suppose that this is why girls in high school, and even in college, rarely approached me. Every now and then, one musters up the courage and asks me out. But they were merely flings. I preferred to keep to myself, minding my own business and simply going with the flow. Although I did have a few romantic ventures throughout my life as a student. They were fleeting. As the saying goes, it was fun while it lasted. I was a hormonal teenager. After all, despite my hard exterior, my inner self was a thrill seeker. So it was not surprising that I had my fair share of fun with various girls. Even now, as I reach my mid-20s, I do not think I have found the love that truly ignited my soul, you know. The electric and passionate kind of love that they portray in movies. Despite being mistaken as someone with no heart and emotion because of my misleading exterior. I admired that kind of burning, head over heels, passionately in love kind of dynamic. I did not think I was capable of sharing a bond like that with anyone. Not now, not ever. But I derive pleasure every now and then from witnessing other people sharing that type of love and daydreaming if I ever will experience one. So much for being brooding and looking emotionless. Why am I getting all sappy? I suppose it is also one of the side effects of isolation. Perhaps being trapped in these four walls is making me long for company I never thought I would ever need. I used to find being surrounded by people exhausting. Although I was somehow sociable. Definitely with the lads. I never truly craved companionship the way I do nowadays. That is why dating and romance in general have been common topics between me and my close friend and roommate. Owen was the polar opposite of me. While I was the intimidating and unapproachable guy, he was a social butterfly. An old-school friendly soul with a knack for all things pretty. He also adored going to the gym, which was where we met. I had just moved into the small city of Havenwood and applied for a gym membership in Atlas. A small independent gym downtown. We had casually passed by each other during our workout sessions previously. But only 2 months in of amiably nodding and smiling towards one another did we make small talk. I was not one for small talks and casual random friendships blooming from the gym. But his aura was too strong. I did have a lot of guy friends, but no one quite had Owen's energy. It was almost as if his inside reflected on his appearance. His hair was golden, often unkempt, and his eyes a deep blue. He looked like the embodiment of light and all things happy. Together, we made a stark contrast, with his messy golden hair and eyes of the brightest blues, while I sported tidy dark hair and chocolate brown eyes. But still, we clicked somehow. It worked like a magnetic force pulling us together. Though platonically at first, we worked out. Owen and I became regular gym buddies and would grab a meal every now and then after our workout sessions. Being new to Havenwood, I did not know many people besides some distant relatives. So he also took the liberty of showing me around during his free time. Quickly, we formed a low-maintenance friendship. We did not feel the need to be around each other all the time. We were polar opposites. After all, he was an extrovert who had a massive friend circle. So he never really ran out of social gatherings to attend. I was an introvert who relished companionship every now and then but did not really feel the need to surround myself with people all the time. Even as I found my footing in the new city. Like going for occasional drinks with my workmates in the insurance firm that I worked at and having football nights with my neighbors. Owen and I still became regulars. Our close friendship was elevated when we decided to turn from casual friends to roommates. One fateful night, we were packing up our gym bags in one of the stuffy and badly lit locker rooms of Atlas after an intense leg day when Owen brought the topic up. "You ready for the month-long lockdown?" he said, sitting on the bench across from me. I was emptying my locker into my blue Nike gym bag, since it will be a while since I will see this rundown gym again. It was not the most aesthetically pleasing place and could use some repair here and there. But Atlas felt like home after months of being here. I met Owen here. After all, I cackled. "You mean am I ready to go back to my usual hibernation but this time with an impressive stockpile of food?" Yes I am." He laughed and shook his head at my usual introvertedness. He must know that I was impartial about the lockdown, as the lack of company never fazed me. "Sometimes I wonder how you live," he replied jokingly. "Bold of you to assume that I live at all." I retorted, "True, A grumpy old man stuck in an adult's body. He joked. I could not help but notice the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled genuinely. I swiftly brushed it off though and rolled my eyes playfully. He watched me with calculating eyes as I continued folding my gym clothes into my bag. I raised my eyebrows at him, prompting him to tell me his thoughts. I knew that scrutinizing gaze well enough. He was deep in thought. You're just gonna stare at me. Or what? I bantered. What do you think of living together? I did a double take, recovered, and then zipped up my gym bag. I sat down on the opposite bench and faced him. Care to elaborate? He was fidgeting with his car keys. He never fidgeted, ever. You know what, with the lockdown and all. My roommate Eric is moving back to his parents. And I was just wondering if, you'd like to move in just for the month. He explained. Eric was this hotshot accountant and Owen's roommate of 2 years. As Havenwood goes into yet another stringent lockdown to combat the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Eric was moving back to his parents' place at Illinois, since he was working from home anyway, leaving Owen to fend for himself. Owen's offer for me to move in did not come as a surprise. Though, for weeks, he has been hinting that being alone in isolation would wreck his extroverted soul. I suppose I could have been a better friend and offered company when I sensed it. But it just was not me to invite myself to places, especially for the long haul. But being ever so observant and somewhat knowing Owen thoroughly despite only being acquainted recently, I had a feeling he longed for company. What came as a surprise, though, was his seemingly nervous tone. That was very unlike Owen. Or perhaps I was just reading too much into his body language. The brief pause must have made him nervous, because he quickly tried to retract his offer. Only if you want though. Because if you don't and you're perfectly fine basking in isolation, then I can live with it for a month. He said skittishly. No, I'm actually down for it. We wouldn't want your extroverted soul wrecked after the month's over, right? I joked. And so we became roommates. Turning from casual gym buddies to friends to roommates is like a roller coaster. I have had my share of roommates before in college, but we paid no mind to each other then, because all the guys and I were almost always out of our dorm anyway. Our shared dorm then seemed like it was merely for sleeping and showering. But after living alone for years and then suddenly having Owen as a roommate, much less in isolation, required massive adjusting. When I moved to Havenwood, I contemplated getting a roommate just to lessen my expenses and be able to save up more of my salary. It would have been useful just to have a local show me around too. Although I ended up not really needing that, since Owen came into my life and became my casual tour guide. But after agreeing to be roommates, I had to face the music. I could not just spend my days reading peacefully and not speaking to anyone. I suppose socialization is a cornerstone of having a nice and lively shared home. That is, if your roommate is half as talkative and outgoing as Owen. Theo, you've got to see this. That's a good deal, isn't it? 2 for $20. And hey, they are large pans. He pointed animatedly to his iPad where he was browsing through the local pizza places. I smiled at his sheer excitement and put my book down momentarily to see the ad he found. When he was not working out or binge watching a new show, Owen would endlessly browse through the net for new takeout places to try. Or home-cooked recipes that he wanted to have, home-cooked recipes that he wanted to eat and wanted me to get me to cook. Between the two of us, I was the better cook. Quite frankly, I cannot fathom how he would have been able to survive if I had rejected his offer and he was forced to live alone. Perhaps he would be eating takeout every day. Come on, let's try this. Might treat, since it is my turn to cook dinner tonight anyway. He said sassily. That's hardly cooking, is it? I chuckled. Well, they have buffalo pizza, your favorite, right? So you better suck it up and thank me for the best dinner you will have. Although I didn't cook it. He patted my head and messed up my hair. A habit he has recently developed. A week into lockdown, we have developed our own little routine. We normally worked out together in his mini gym in the early morning, making our separate breakfast afterwards. He would then spend his day gardening, obsessively checking out his plants. He called his green babies, or what I dubbed as his love child with Shrek. When he got tired, he would wind down in the living room with a podcast or binge the shows he is currently obsessed with. At the moment, he is trying to get me to watch Dynasty with him. When I was not working on my computer, I would bury my head in a book in the living room as I snack on some healthy tidbits. And that was how we spent our days. Just the two of us in the living room, with him browsing through the Netflix selection on the massive 65-inch television and me deeply engrossed in yet another novel. At night, we would take turns cooking, which basically means I cook on days assigned to me, and he orders takeout on his days. And we share a peaceful meal. Some nights are more chatty, while on others we eat in silence contentedly. Time is odd, at times. It is fleeting, other times, it is excruciatingly slow. But as Owen and I continued to live in our own little bubble, it began to feel like normalcy all too quickly. It seemed as though we have been living like this for ages. As though we were born to be like this, platonic soulmates. He would say, but time also does this weird thing where it changes its fickle mind and swerves you to a different path once you begin to have a taste of contentment and have fallen into a routine. I am babbling, likely because to be writing this would mean I am acknowledging that something in me has been ignited. That one fateful day happened days ago. My work for the day had just concluded after a meeting with some of my bosses. To say that it was a bad day was an understatement, it was atrocious. The day started off with me oversleeping. So that meant I missed an online conference with a particularly picky client that I had been trying to secure for weeks. I was so close to securing that deal. That was strike two. Strike two came around lunchtime. I had an hour break before my next virtual meeting. So I dedicated the time to making Owen's favorite food, mushroom risotto. He had been gone the entire morning shopping for some essentials, and I wanted to surprise him with the meal when he got home. Halfway through, an emergency at work required me to take a call for roughly 15 minutes. The risotto got overcooked, and Owen came home to our smoked-up kitchen. "What the hell happened here?" he said. He was not mad. Owen never got mad, although I would like to think he had every right to, since he religiously freshened up our place with his aromatherapy diffuser. His favorite scent was a tangy citrus. I was not a fan of it, but I went with whatever he liked. I dumped the blackened risotto into the trash can and proceeded to wash the Teflon pan. "Just overcooked some risotto," I replied softly. I bet he was about to make some smart remark until he noticed that I was looking quite downcasted. He then perched himself on a nearby counter and patted my back. Suddenly, I felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. As someone whose love language was touch, I appreciate a gesture as small as this. I went about my day after that dreadful meal. Thankfully, Owen had bought some rotisserie chicken from the grocery store. I had a crucial meeting at about 3 p.m. It was bad enough as is. Since our sales have gone down from the last month that I was among the worst performing employees. Securing the deal this morning would have been my redemption. But as I had overslept, that was out of the question. I ended up getting an earful from my superiors. And after that meeting, my mind was much too clouded to cook dinner for Owen and me that night. After a long and appalling day at online work, I plopped down on the couch opposite Owen, who was knitting. "Chinese sound good to you? I'll call Lucky One in a bit if you want," I offered. Lucky One was a family-owned Chinese restaurant a stone's throw away from the gym that we used to go to. It was one of my personal discoveries after moving to Havenwood, and I introduced Owen to it shortly after we met. He raised an eyebrow and put down his crochet work at once. He moved over to the couch next to me, not once breaking eye contact. It was like he was seeing right through me with those intense deep blue eyes. "You good? You have never offered to order takeout ever," he said slowly, as if calculating my mood. "Day at work," I replied, looking over at him, and then proceeded to tell him about the failed deal and my boss's remarks about my performance. All the while, Owen propped his chin in the palm of his hand while listening attentively. He even patted my back as reassurance when my voice would crack slightly. Evidently affected by the happenings of that day. "Well, you were indeed dumb for missing the client call. I mean, you could have just told me. I was up at the ass crack of dawn doing the Pilates video I had sent you last night." He rolled his eyes. "But hey, those comments by your stupid bosses, out of the line. Uncalled for. They clearly don't know what they are saying." I cracked a small smile, aware that my breathing was picking up as Owen's hand remained on my back, rubbing me up and down every once in a while. Ironically, instead of soothing me, I was getting nervous because of his touch. "Your bosses don't know and don't appreciate what kind of talented and hardworking soul you are. I mean, beneath your robotic aura, you have this brilliant man," he continued. "Don't let them dampen your spirit. I mean, sure, You may have had a bad month of sales, but it isn't for life, right? You can always bounce back. And then the fateful moment happened. Long story short, he hugged me. I compare a lot of my real-life experiences to how movies and books portray them. But this was by far the most true to life. I never thought that slow-motion moment of epiphany scene could happen to me. Not until that day. As soon as our skins touched, there were electric sparks reverberating throughout my body. Something I had never felt before. Not with him. Not with the girls I have been with before. Not with anyone. I looked up cautiously, aware of the goosebumps that had just formed on my skin. My eyes were met with the most vivid blue orbs, passionate, full of life, and they belonged to my good friend and current roommate. Immediately, I knew I was in trouble. He just chuckled. "Well, I'm gonna forgive you for burning that mushroom risotto because you have had a day. Alright," he joked. I was surely in trouble. The nagging thoughts and foreboding whispers that I have been pushing to the back of my head for the past few weeks came flooding back into my memory like an avalanche. Thoughts of Owen engulfed my mind. No longer did I see him as a casual gym buddy turned good friend and roommate. But something more. A myriad of feelings rushed to me. And I was overwhelmed. Throughout that afternoon, as I cooked our dinner, chicken tikka masala, which we both enjoyed to bits, my mind could not help but wander to the events of that afternoon and how my body, my mind, and most importantly, my heart reacted. Could it be that I was falling for him? I was beyond puzzled. All my life, up until this moment, I was under the impression that I was attracted to girls and girls alone. Could this be the reason why my other romantic ventures pale in comparison to how I feel when I was with Owen? How is it possible that a mere moment of realization that I might have feelings for him is proving to be more electric than the passionate and steamy nights I have had with other people in the past? That night, we had dinner across from each other as always. I had gained enough energy from being comforted by him, so I opted not to order takeout and cooked instead. We savored the savory dish that I had cooked, and he seemed to be over the moon about the food. He always did that when I cooked. He would make approving noises and savor every bite, occasionally swinging his utensils in satisfaction. I realized that night that my heart fluttered whenever I saw him smile. "Come on, Theo, you have cooked for a lot of people before, and they all love it. Do you react the same way when they give you such approval?" I berated myself mentally. I suppose my silence was somewhat unusual because sooner or later, Owen noticed it. "You're being awfully quiet. All good? Still reeling from this afternoon?" he queried. I nodded and made an effort to keep the conversation flowing. I guess it is better to bottle up my emotions to prevent a sudden outburst and confession before I was able to fully comprehend what I was feeling. I knew that having feelings for a friend, and a gay friend at that, was unexplored territory for me. But I also knew deep in my heart that love had no boundaries. If the love that I have been waiting for all my life is coming at me full speed, there was no stopping it. At the back of my mind, I knew that I lacked the typical romantic demeanor that Owen has been accustomed to. I knew because he would babble about the guys he dated in the past. And I knew for sure that I was not even half as romantic as them. The romance I knew was normally bounded in novels and cheesy rom-com movies. I did not embody that in real life. And a part of me was afraid that Owen would crave that. Wait, what? Why is my mind wandering to how Owen will react to my confession? Was I even headstrong in making the confession in the first place? Was I ready? These were questions that clouded my head over the past couple of days. Try as I may, I cannot keep my mind off Owen. We would be sitting in our usual spots in the living room, him watching some Netflix show and me supposedly reading. But I would find myself looking up from my book and watching him with hooded eyes. Even at dinner time, I found myself watching him for a moment too long as he savored whatever dish we were having that night. I found myself noticing the littlest details about him, features or habits that I had not paid attention to before. It seemed like everything he did or did not do was a trap for me. And I found myself falling headfirst for him. And yet, even as I got overwhelmed with infatuation, or whatever this was I was feeling for Owen, I found myself being ever so cautious around him. Our friendship was getting stronger by the day. I could not possibly ruin it by pursuing him to be something more unless he felt the same way. True to keeping my feelings in check, I went about the following days without acting on my newly discovered feelings for Owen. Surely, I was more attentive than ever to his actions and how he reciprocated my gestures. I knew that whenever we were across each other in the living room, one knitting or watching television and the other's nose was buried in a book. I had the tendency to look over at him every now and then in steal glances. But lately I have been noticing that there were instances that I looked up and he was already watching me too. When caught, he would swiftly avert his gaze or give a small smile, as if brushing it off. I noticed that on days that I snoozed my alarm a little too much and did not have the time to make my bed immediately, I would return from my showers and find that my sheets were already tidied up. On the same days that I am running late for my virtual working hours while I got dressed, fresh coffee was already brewing in the sleek Cuisinart coffee maker. Owen did not drink coffee, he always opted for tea. So clearly he prepared the coffee for me. These were little gestures that I did not heed. What I am now noticing, for a person so observant, you must think I have been ignorant towards these acts. Could it be that all along there were clues that I missed? Were there tiny acts of love that I did not see? These thoughts pondered in my head over and over again, but I choose not to dwell on them as much in the daytime. Otherwise I would get distracted while doing my online work. At nighttime, it was tough to push such wishful thinking aside, especially when he was so close in proximity and the connection between us was so magnetic. One particular night, I could not help myself. He forced me to put down my book for the night and watch The Revenant with him. He went all out for the movie night, opening a pricey bottle of wine, a parting gift from his ex-roommate Eric, apparently, in ordering a small charcuterie platter from a place downtown. During a particularly horrifying scene when Leonardo DiCaprio was attacked by a massive bear, Owen at once clung onto me. Shocked by the sudden turn of events, I felt my heart pounding against my rib cage. And one thing was for sure. I was praying that Owen could not sense my nerves and all the butterflies in my stomach that have surfaced because of our proximity. Once the scene was over, he patted my head and messed up my ever so tidy brown hair. I rolled my eyes. Only he does that. No one really dared to tangle up my hair because it was always so immaculately brushed and styled. "Don't do that," I whispered. That sure was a moment of weakness. He must have felt the intensity of my gaze because his smile disappeared at once and he retreated further from me on the couch. "Whoa there, Mr. Grumpy Pants, why the sudden change of mood?" he questioned. You cannot do that. You cannot move into my arms like that then suddenly move away. I crave your warmth. I want to hold you. I cannot focus when you touch me like that." Of course, I did not say all this. I was much too scared for his reaction and for rejection. I must say in my life I never truly pinned for anyone. Chasing a romantic conquest was new to me. I was a go-with-the-flow kind of guy. I was not built for romantic chases like this. And yet with Owen, I found myself hoping that something awaits us. Hoping that we may have a chance. Hoping, just newly styled. That's all. I brushed it off. He shrugged, and we went back to the movie. It was pretty good, if I do say so myself. I was not one for violent and gritty movies, but a Leonardo film feels different. Part of me was also extremely relieved that he did not pry into my reaction any further. It was a moment of weakness, and I should have known better. I needed to keep my emotions in check, or just like my past relationships, my friendship and hope for a relationship with Owen will crumble. There were days when I could keep my feelings in check. By in check I meant that I normally channeled my desire for any romantic connections with Owen in the romance novels I read during my free time. A particular book called The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue got me in my feelings. Owen must have noticed because he kept teasing me and asking if I was able to relate to Monty, the main character. It did not help that a major plot point of the book revolved around Monty being in love with his best friend. The moment Owen brought it up and mentioned that he had read the book before, I knew I started flushing like crazy. "You could be the Monty to my Percy. You know." He winked. I must have blushed even harder because he started laughing and said I looked like a tomato. "You're cute when you do that," he said casually, squeezing my right cheek before walking right back to his bedroom. I tried to calm my breathing, but of course my heart was fluttering uncontrollably. Moments like that made me feel like maybe Owen and I had a chance. Maybe, just maybe, felt the same way about me. These what-ifs plagued my mind as I laid in bed that night and every other succeeding night. If I am honest, the month-long quarantine was soon over. But it was announced that the city was only giving the people of Havenwood a week to prepare for the Christmas holidays before stricter precautions were in place again. I decided to stay in town for the holidays. as my parents will be on a ski trip with a friend group in Alaska. While my only other sibling, Tiffany, was spending it with her husband and in-laws. Owen was also staying, and so that meant we only had each other for company during the Christmas time. On the first day after the month-long lockdown, we bundled up and headed to go tree shopping. I was decked out in a cashmere turtleneck and a black coat. I also wore a brown scarf that Owen had knitted for me a week ago while he binged the new season of Emily in Paris. He emerged from his room clad in a stylish gray long sleeve and a similar scarf. "You look nice," I said softly. He raised his eyebrows at me, evidently puzzled at my sudden compliment. "What has gotten into you?" He smiled. "Thanks, you don't look so bad yourself." As we walked through Holt, the little Christmas tree village in Havenwood, the air felt heavy. There was palpable tension in the air, like an icicle threatening to crack in a time. It must have been one-sided, though, because Owen was his ever-jolly self, inspecting every little tree we passed by and making funny remarks. He was just babbling about the massive Christmas tree he had been decorating as a 6-year-old when suddenly it fell on him. I am not going to lie, but I did not understand much of his story. This was partly because he was talking so animatedly and excitingly fast that his speech was somewhat slurred. But it was mostly because I was just staring at him. All at once, I saw Owen. And I love every bit of him. The way his eyes were crinkling as he smiled genuinely. Recalling his childhood. The way his hands flung here and there as he described what Christmas markets were like in his hometown of Hangelton. You know, the final scene in the Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn Part 2, when Edward looked into Bella's eyes and took a trip down memory lane together as "A Thousand Years" by Christina Perri played in the background? That was how I felt at that very moment. I thought back to when I first saw Owen in Atlas wearing his gray fitted Adidas tee. I thought about when we first had dinner together after an exhausting day at the gym. How he brought me to his favorite Mexican place in town and we talked for hours about our interests. I thought about the plenty of times I watched him from one corner of the living room as he knitted or crocheted or whatever his obsession was for that week. I thought about how passionately he did everything he liked. I thought about how he tried to bake an apple pie for me when I had a particularly rough day at work and how it ended up being such a failure. So he ended up ordering from Grandma Apple, a bakery in town, instead, but I appreciated it all the same. I still ate his burned apple pie and thanked him profusely for it. I thought about the nights I brainstormed new recipes of dishes to cook for him because the flutter in my stomach and the joy that I felt when I see him relish my cooking was priceless. I thought about his likes, dislikes, his passions, his flaws, and realized that I could see a lifetime by his side. And you know, I was 7. Of course I believed in Son, I love you. I interrupted his story at once. And I know you will find this odd. Since when did I like boys anyway? Right? But I will say it anyway. Because with you, it feels right. With you, there are no rules, no boundaries, nothing in my life. Not a single romantic relationship or friendship with anyone ever compares to what I have been feeling for you in the short time we have been acquainted. Yes, I may be like a Grinch compared to your joyful and bright self. But you just bring an indescribable light into my life. You are the indescribable light of my life. And if you let me, I know this is a long shot, but if you by any chance feel the same way. And if you let me, I do want to have a lifetime of burnt apple pies with you. I will watch Dynasty or whatever the hell you are binging at the moment. Hey, I will even crochet with you or do gardening and take care of your plants after your babies. Because I love you, and I know the other boys you have been out with. I blurted so fast that even I could hardly comprehend what I was saying. He put a finger to my lip and shushed me. My heart was pounding so quickly that I thought it could burst at any moment. I was much too afraid of rejection. I do not think I could handle being turned down by the only person I ever felt this strongly towards. But then he smiled. That damn smile. The smile that rivals that of James Dean. The smile that immediately made me forget my worries. And at that moment I knew everything was going to be all right. I never thought this day would come. He whispered, inching closer to me. I love you. That whole outburst, just wow. No one has ever said things like that to me. No one has ever made me feel that way. I let out a sigh of relief. An inch closer towards him, grabbing his hand in the process, putting it over my heart. You feel that? That is all for you. I confessed. He laughed. And there goes the smile that I am crazy for yet again. And you say you're not romantic? I closed my eyes and felt the warmth of his lips enveloping my own. I have never been good with words. But if I were to describe the intensity of that moment, I would use a car crash to paint it. The moments leading up to the accident are crystal clear. I could still smell Owen's minty breath as he approached me. I could still hear the bustling of the other shoppers in the distance. I could feel the cold Havenwood chill seeping through my layers of winter wear. But the precise instance when our lips touched seemed hazy. Like a particularly incredible dream that you cannot quite recall but left you feeling so good that you just want to fall back asleep in an attempt to remember it. The moment after was crystal clear too. My hazel eyes met his blue ones. Slowly, the corners of his eyes were lifted. And he smiled. A genuine smile that made my heart speed up. I saw him and only him. Almost as if he was outlined and spotlighted in a room filled with people and Christmas trees. We spent the remainder of the day hand in hand on a hunt for the perfect Christmas tree. Aha, Owen remarked as he let go of my gloved hand when we finally approached a decently sized tree that smelled immaculate. As I paid for the tree and watched as it was being tied, I saw a symbol of our new relationship, an item of hope, and a fresh beginning. We had not explicitly talked about our kiss, but the intensity was much too strong to be ignored. Later that night, Owen and I ordered takeout from Lucky One. While waiting, he blasted some Michael Bublé while I dusted off boxes in the basement and found his stash of Christmas decors consisting of lights, balls, stars, flowers, and more. We decorated the tree in peace, once in a while stopping when there was a song that Owen felt like dancing to. He would grab my hand, spin himself until I in all my ungraceful and robotic glory also grooved with him. I find that when I was with him, I subconsciously let go of all my limitations. The box that I have been caging myself in for my whole life was suddenly non-existent. At that moment, it was only him and me. Later that night, we topped off the Christmas tree decorating session by jointly putting on the star atop the well-styled tree. The motif revolved around White Christmas, so the fresh tree was decked out in balls of white and blue. "It's beautiful," I complimented, looking at the beauty we have created. "It is," replied Owen, "so beautiful." I turned to look at him only to see him staring right through me. He hugged me yet again, a feeling that I have been craving more and more lately. Our connection was simply electrifying. It was the kind of bond so deep that you physically and mentally crave it. It was inescapable. It was undeniable. It was beautiful. And so it was. We spent the remainder of the holiday season in our tiny bubble. The city had restrictions on moving about and going out during the holiday season. But this time around, we had no complaints. We were much too engrossed in each other's company to want to go out anyway. As Christmas was approaching, we were both on leave from work, so that meant we had more free time and developed a new routine. In unison, we would always start the day with a light but satisfying workout in the mini gym, followed by a hefty breakfast. After showering and doing more household chores, we would settle in the living room and bask in the winter sunlight seeping through the beige curtains. I had been reading a Christmassy novel called Let It Snow recently, while Owen was invested in making scarves and beanies for his friends. This would be their Christmas presents, he said. We would play his Christmas playlist on Spotify. Lunch would roll in, and lately I have been teaching Owen some basic kitchen skills. He was an enthusiastic learner. Although as the recipes got more complex and the mess piled up in the kitchen, he had a tendency to give me those blue puppy eyes and pout that I could not resist. There were days that he just gave up, pulled his "let's just make out" card, and we would end up on the couch for either of our bedrooms. We would then call takeout shortly after. At night, we would watch Christmas movies or Owen's television obsession at the moment, bundled up in a large brown blanket that Owen had knitted for us personally. We would watch television or kiss, whichever we felt like at the moment, until it was time for bed. This was our new normal. We fell into this routine with ease as if we had been doing it for our entire life. I suppose when you find love that is raw and pure, pieces will fall into place by themselves. Pieces surely fell into place and completed the puzzle that was our blooming relationship. On Christmas night, we had just eaten a sumptuous dinner prepared by the both of us and substantiated by some store-bought dishes. I served a mouth-watering winter spice cauliflower soup that Owen slurped and absolutely adored. "If you keep cooking like this, I might just marry you right here right now," he joked. Doesn't seem like a bad idea after all, I replied, and we both chuckled. I also made roasted turkey with corn and chestnut stuffing for the main dish, while Owen whipped out some delectable Brussels sprouts and vegetables to top off our first Christmas together. He ordered some spiced donuts and chestnut ice cream, which we ate as we exchanged our Christmas presents. We had agreed to only limit ourselves to one gift for each other because we both knew our tendency to go overboard. Generosity was one of our shared traits. When he handed me a small package wrapped in luxurious gold and white paper and adorned by a ribbon, I never would have expected it to contain a beautiful edition of one of my favorite books. "How did you know I wanted this?" I inquired after thanking him profusely and giving him a passionate kiss. "You mentioned it, I think, maybe a month after we became friends," he replied. I was in awe, disbelieving that he had been that attentive to the things I love. I never pegged him to be much of a book guy, so I assumed that whenever I would babble about my interests previously, he did not really care. But I suppose this was tangible evidence that he did care all along and that all this time he had been listening to me. I forced my heart to calm down momentarily so I could muster up the courage to give my present to him. It was a nice ring from Pandora that I intended to double up as his Christmas present and also as a means to ask him to officially be my boyfriend. Despite the routine we have built in the little bubble Owen and I have been in lately, I wanted to give him the courtship he deserved. Knowing that he was a romantic, I surely prayed that this would make him elated. "Oh," he squealed, opening up the small paper bag and immediately tearing up at the side of the ring box. "You didn't," I smiled slightly, tearing up at the genuineness of his reaction. "It isn't much," I started, "but I wanted to give you something that symbolized what you are to me." Opening up the ring box, I revealed a heart-shaped sterling silver ring. It was adorned by tiny crown details. "Here it is. You are the king of my heart. You have captured my body, my mind, and my soul in all ways imaginable. In the short time we have been together, you made me feel things I never thought I was capable of feeling. Even just being with you in this house, doing random we both just feel like doing. You have already taken me to places that no one has ever come close to taking me to. So if you let me, I will love you for a lifetime, Owen. But before that, I hope you will let me officially love you at this very moment. Will you be my boyfriend? 1,000 times yes, Mr. Non-Romantic." The end. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our rainbow force and stay wholesome.